Hi there, my name is Michael, and this is Michael Helwig Interiors vlog for my blog, which sounds really strange, and I'm not sure that's exactly what I'm going to call it, but it is a work in progress. Anyway, I'm a design pro, and I specialize in small rooms with tricky and awkward layouts, and I am spending my time here talking to you about how I think about the processes of decorating the spaces and the challenges that come along with angled walls and tricky architecture and things like that in different spaces. So if you have a little room that has challenges like this, you're in the right place. Today I'm going to be talking about a small 9-foot by 10-foot bedroom, and you might think, well, big deal, it's just a small bedroom, we can work with that. But this small bedroom has an angled doorway, a bumped into the room closet, which bumps in about 2 feet or so, and opposite of that, there is an off-center window on the other wall, which is going to be tricky for decorating and things like that. So I'm going to get into all of that for you right now. You are snoring so loud. It's really something. Anyway, so this room being 9 foot by 10 foot, it is definitely tricky. I'm going to put up a couple of slides here as I'm talking to so you can kind of get an idea of what the space looks like. So those 3 things that I really want to focus in on for this space, and really what I have to pay attention to in order to get the arrangement just right and to get it so that it's going to work properly for my client, is that angled doorway, because at the bottom of that angled doorway there's going to be a little bit of space that you could put things, but really maybe not a whole lot of space that you can put a lot of things. So that's something to really pay attention to. That bumped in closet is really going to take up that 2 feet of space into the room, and then that off center window in the corner opposite that closet is really going to be tricky, mostly for decorating. So it's going to be something that is going to pose problems with symmetry and balance and things like that. It can absolutely happen. You can certainly be successful decorating a room like this, even with the angled wall and the kind of awkward shape of the space. You can certainly do things that are going to work really well for it. And really, what this client really wanted me to do, I keep saying really, so really, was to create a space for them that accomplished a few different things. So really what that translated then into was 3 different iterations of the same space. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to go into how to arrange this room 3 different ways, not just one way, not just get functionality out of it just the one way. We're going to go into 3 different ways to make this space a couple of different purposes. We want to have a space for working, a space for relaxing, and a space for sleeping. And my client wasn't particular on any one of those 3 things being priority over the other. It's just going to be, what can we do with this space, and have it 3 different ways. So let's get into the first way now. So here we are with the room, and this is your 10-foot side on this wall here, and your 9-foot side on this wall here. Of course, they're a little bit more, like this is 9'4", this is a 10'6". You actually have a couple more feet over here in the corner, but the closet, of course, bumps out. So as we were talking about in the blog, let's talk about the things that make this room tricky. So basically, you have an angled entry doorway here. You have a closet that bumps in about 2 feet over here, which makes this space really, this is kind of like, imagine a line coming right down here. That's going to give you like a longer rectangle. That's the space you have to work with. And the third tricky thing about the space, of course, is the off-center window. So those are the things that make it a little bit more challenging. So I'm calling this one the bunk room. So if we look at the furniture in this space, if we go in, you'll kind of see that this room here has a couple of twin size beds. They're a couple of matching twin size beds. And basically what that does is it gives you the opportunity to have a couple people stay, maybe a couple of kids, maybe a couple of siblings or a couple of friends, probably not a couple, but whatever. So if you're looking at it from this perspective, this is a pretty functional space. Now what makes it more functional and how it really works is that I have this desk, or it's a little dresser that goes in between, kind of like a bachelor chest that goes in between. You can see here that it doesn't extend out pretty far. It's actually only about where the head would go on the beds over here. So just basically where the pillows are. It's not super deep, and I did that on purpose because I didn't want something big kind of popping out over here, taking up a lot of space. So having a shared bedside table like this is a good way to kind of capitalize on a little bit of space. Because it's a little bit longer than it is deep, it gives you the nice opportunity to have a bunch of space in between these two beds over here too. So the person that's sleeping in this bed, isn't bumping knees with the person sleeping in this bed over here, for example. You can also open up the closet doors over here on the side as well. So that's another good thing. Let's look at this in 3D to kind of give you a better idea of where I was going with stuff. So if we kind of spin it around, you'll see that angled entryway here, kind of walking into the space. You're not bumping right into the bottom of the bed. You've basically got, a good 2 feet of entry space into the room before, and then probably about another 2 feet before you actually get to where the bed is anyway. So you can see that both of these beds have, a nice silhouette to them. And what makes them work is that they don't have any footboards on them. So that's another thing I want to kind of point out too. So if you're looking at doing a bedroom like this, consider not getting a bed with a footboard. So basically what that's going to do, if you have a footboard on a bed, that's going to bump things out about another 2 to 4 inches outside of here. What it also does is it gives you a visual barrier when you're walking into the space. So you're walking into the bottom of the bed, the first thing you see is the footboard that might be a little bit higher, and it's just really going to obstruct the view into the space, and it's going to obstruct your sensibility in the space as you're walking into it. Okay, so that's one thing I'll point out as well. So if you notice the headboards as well, now that we're speaking about the kind of the architecture of the bed, I have some very simple arched headboards here. I wanted to do something with a little bit of a different shape in the space too. There's lots and lots of angular things, lots of 90-degree angles with art and with the furniture and everything else. I wanted something a little bit softer when it comes to the headboards. Because this one is being placed in front of the window over here, I also didn't want anything solid. So no panel headboard, nothing that's going to have some opacity to it. I wanted something to be clear that you can see all the way through, and it just makes things feel a little bit more open and airy as well. Now, remember when we were looking at this in the second ago, when we were looking at the room as a tricky space, there is no other window over here. So what I did was I put a mirror on the wall and I hung curtains in front of it that matched the curtains on this side. So basically what you have then is you have a mirror image of what's going on over here that is already there. It's going to be there no matter what. So why not create something over here that's going to give you the effect that you have over here. Now, if you wanted the grids in there, you could certainly go in with a little bit of electrical tape that is white, or maybe some packing tape that's white or something that gives you those grids as well. That might be another thing to do. But if you look at it from this perspective, it almost looks like there's another window there. So you got the symmetry, you've got the balance. You bring those curtains all the way up to the top. You vary your line with your art and things like that. So the last thing I'll talk about in this space is kind of the way I wanted to keep things a little bit more simple. I didn't want to do some very, loud or colorful art. I wanted to do things that were very calm, very serene, to have almost like a resort-like feel to this space. So basically, black and white picture over here, the non-representational art over on this side, a little bit of abstract art in between. If you notice, this line here kind of brings the eye down a little bit this way, kind of goes this way again. You want to vary your height and vary your line of things as well. So then I just put a simple table lamp in between the two beds and a little bit of a plant there too. I wanted to keep things very minimal so that the guests that were staying in this room would have places to put their phones down at night. Maybe if they brought their own, alarm clock or whatever else, whatever stuff that they would want to bring with them, that they would have a surface to put things down on. A cup of coffee at night, or a cup of coffee in the morning, maybe a drink of water for at night, things like that. So that is how this first room turned out. And again, this one's called the Bunk Room. We'll be back again in another couple minutes with the next option for you. So what did you think of that space? That was interesting, wasn't it? What did you think of the window that was actually a mirror? Was that something that you would do? How would you handle that? How would you handle doing something that is off-center that you would want to kind of create a little bit of symmetry and some balance with? I thought that was kind of an interesting way to do it. You could certainly do it with art, or you could certainly do it with, a couple of different pieces, as long as they're going to give you the height that was kind of being matched on the other side. I think that is something to really kind of consider to make a room like that work. Having the beds also on the longest wall opposite the closet gives you enough space to kind of put two of those beds in there, and to have that bachelor's chest in between, giving you a lot of room to kind of get in and out of the bed and move very, very easily around in this space too. I thought that was something that was certainly that fit the bill pretty well too. So now we're going to do another iteration of the room, and this time it's going to be completely different. So stick around and tell me what you think about this one too. So we're back here with option number 2, and I'm calling this one the small office / relaxation nook or relaxing nook. So basically what we have here is a desk situation over here, and then you have a daybed with a trundle underneath it on this side. So basically the couple of things, now all the same stuff that was tricky with the other iteration is the exact same thing. I haven't changed anything at all. So you still have that corner or that angled entry into the room. Your closet still bumps out. You still have the off-center window over here. So what makes this one work is that you have a smaller desk. So remember when I was saying about how this wall here is a little bit tough in the blog, if you read the blog, that something really couldn't be placed over here. And so you really have to be kind of mindful of that. You didn't want to have a large desk, a long desk on this wall that's going to take up that much space because you're going to be walking into the corner of the desk as you're walking into the room. So you really want to give yourself the opportunity to have a little bit more space when you're walking into the room. You don't want to walk into the corner of something or the end of something if you don't have to. That's really not what it's about. So if we look at this in 3D, I'll kind of show you about what we got going on here. So basically you have your desk on this wall over here. I did a little bit of a mirror alongside of it here just to give you a place. I think that all bedrooms or rooms like this should have a mirror in them. If people are going to be staying in there, you know, they're going to want to be able to look in the mirror before they leave the room and stuff like that. So that's basically what that is over there. But above the desk I have some floating shelves over here. I've got a really small kind of writer style desk underneath. My client didn't want anything big. I agree. A room this size really couldn't handle something like an executive desk or something that has a lot of closed drawers and things like that. You want something to be open. You want to be able to see through to the wall and see through around things as well. So, you know, a very simple kind of pull out, you know, chair there with, you know, a little bit of a contrasting sort of finish on it. Give us a little bit more kind of character and things like that. So basically that's what I first chose to do, is this desk. In order to deal with the off-center window over here in the corner, I decided to put a little credenza over here and also some floating shelves above it. Now the floating shelves and everything, this line kind of mimics this line over here, and that's where you're going to get your symmetry from. So if you don't want to do something like the last example where I put, you know, a window that was dressed like a mirror that was dressed like a window on this side, you could do something like this where you have shelves above a credenza like this over here in the corner, and that's going to give you the same sort of line, so you've got some symmetry going on there, if that makes any sense at all. The thing that was the toughest thing to do in the room was to find a daybed that was going to fit into the space. Now, you can find daybeds everywhere. You can find them in any style that you want. You can find them with trundle beds underneath them so that you can have a couple of people staying in this room. So essentially, this room is kind of like the bunk room, where you do have a bed here and then you do have another separate bed underneath here, okay? So you have that option for 2 people staying in this room anyway. But a daybed this size is a little bit trickier to do because, you know, you usually don't find them where you have an excess of interior space, which is always good, but you also have skinny arms. So you'll find them most of the time with like wooden arms or upholstered arms. Sometimes they're going to have rolled arms. They're going to be wider. They're going to take up more exterior space, which is exactly what I did not want. So I went on the hunt for this one for a long time to be able to find this option, and it fit the bill perfectly. And the reason why it fits the bill perfectly is because you can still get into the closet over here. Yes, it's a little bit tight, but you can open up those closet doors all the way. You can scoot into this space over here. You can almost take a step into the closet if you had to, you know, to get access to things in there. So it's really very, very functional for the space. You know, having a floor lamp that might be a little bit of a thinner profile would be able to bump this over a little bit more too. But again, I like to have things a little bit more centered on the wall, so that's kind of the goal that I had there as well. Did a little bit of a floating kind of plant over here, just to give it a little bit of green. Same thing with plants over here, plant on the desk, just to kind of keep things minimal and things like that. So as we're talking about decor, I did this really nice round mirror. So instead of doing another piece of art or something else over there, I thought that would be a nice thing to kind of give it a different shape again. So you have lots and lots of 90-degree angles in the space. Having something round over there, I think, is really a nice thing to do as well. So that is basically what you got with the option number 2 for the small office relaxation nook. And you can come in here with a glass of wine, sit and read the Sunday paper, sit there with your tablet, have a coffee in the morning or tea at night. Or if you want to just go in there and shut the door and have some me time, that's absolutely the best place to do it. So I would love to have a space like that where I can kind of go off and just sort of sit there and regather myself before getting on with the day. So that is what the purpose of this room is for. And then also, again, to have a little bit of a office space in case my client wanted to work while they are at their vacation home. So that is the purpose of this space, and I'll be back again in a couple minutes with the next. A day bed. How about that? Something that you don't see a lot anymore is having something like a day bed or a trundle bed. It certainly is functional, definitely does fit the bill to make this room into a bedroom if it needs to be for a certain amount of time, and also a workspace if you have the need for a desk and also to maybe be working from home, which a lot of us are doing. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to do it. So flipping it around, taking the main piece of furniture and putting it on a smaller wall, that was something that could certainly have been a bigger problem than it actually was. And now it did also, as I mentioned in the video, take me a little bit of time to find that particular daybed. But once I did, I found that it was the perfect fit for that wall. So even if you do not want to put your furniture on the longest wall in the space and you want to put it on maybe one of the smaller walls in the room, you can still work. So you can still certainly do that as long as you pay attention to the dimensions of things. So that is absolutely one thing to take away from the video today, is to really know both your room dimensions and also the furniture dimensions that you're putting into the room as well. So you definitely want to make sure that you have all of that down really, really well before you start ordering furniture. Now the third room is something that is different than the first two rooms for sure. And I went a little bit further with the decor on this one too. So tell me what you think about this one. So here we are now back with the third iteration, and this one is called the dedicated guest suite. So basically this one is, one purpose and one purpose only. So this is a guest room for weekend guests, for whomever wants to use it for that purpose. So once again, you're walking in on the angled wall over here. You have your closet over here, your off-center window over here. So basically, this one being just a guest room where you're really only having one function to the space, I really wanted to be very mindful of the pathways to that one function. So this is really going to be where people are going to go when they walk into the space. It's going to be, right into bed probably. So having enough space to walk around a bed like this is going to be very, very important. Now this bed is a queen size bed, if you can believe it. This is a queen size bed, and this space that is only 9 foot by about 10 foot wide, or 9 by 10. So getting a queen size bed in there was no small feat, but it worked, and here is why it worked. Now you have a couple of bedside tables next to the bed. If I was to have some typical nightstands or typical bedside tables next to the bed, you would have probably something that's going to come out a little bit further, and it's going to bump into this door over here on this side. It's going to really hinder or obstruct that door. You probably wouldn't be able to open it at all, so you'd only have access to the one side. Who needs that? That's kind of a pain. So finding a couple of tables that were a little bit more shallow is really what made this space work, in my opinion. So having a bed kind of in the center, having these nightstands that were positioned behind the door, so you can see that this kind of, it pops out just a little bit, but it really wouldn't, do anything to the functionality of that door. So having them behind that little bit of a bump out there is really what's going to make this space work. So I just, on this version, I did a little bit of a bigger dresser. Again, it's not super, super long, because having something over here would, it would really just be inconvenient for walking into the space. So having something that's a little bit smaller is going to work. Also, having something that isn't super deep as well is what makes this work too. So a typical dresser might come out a little bit further. This one here is quite shallow, so it's only about 18, 19 inches deep, which is really what you want to do for a space like this. You don't want to go with something that's going to be 20 or 22 inches deep. It's just not going to work in this space. Okay, so we look at this in 3D. I went a little bit different with this one. So instead of it being just, the beige walls, I wanted to do something a little bit more funky in the space. So I put a focal wall behind the bed, and I did a peel and stick wallpaper back there. I did a couple of some geometric prints to kind of go over the geometric wallpaper, and I thought that that was like a really nice focal point there. Instead of having bedside lamps on the two nightstands, which are basically floating nightstands, if you can kind of look at these, oops, if I can kind of scoot out just a little bit, there are no legs. They are attached to the wall. So nothing's going to go underneath there. It just gives you a little bit more space to put a pair of shoes or a pair of slippers or something like that underneath there. And of course, again, they don't come off the wall very far, but they're functional. So you really don't want to have something that has too much in a wall like that. Again, this is not the longest wall in the space. This is actually one of the shorter walls in the space. So my rule of thumb typically is to put the furniture on the longest wall, but I didn't want to do that here because of the off-center window. I didn't want to put the bed here, plus having a headboard that was more solid. I didn't want part of it being over the window. So those are really the reasons why I decided to put the bed over here on this side. And I think that it really makes a nice presentation when you're walking into the space, when you can see the bed as the first thing that you really notice when you're walking into the space. I think that makes a big difference too. So instead of, again, having lights on the two nightstands, I did two sconces above, and I thought that was a great use. They're high enough so that a person that would be sitting here or there could be reading nice and comfortably in bed at night, and they're going to be bright enough, to shine light kind of in the corner and also onto the bed as well. If we spin it around this way, the view that you get, I wanted to keep things very simple on this wall, so nothing that's going to be a big piece of art. I didn't want anything that was going to be busy again or bright in this space. It's more of a retreat. It's more of a repose in this place. So I wanted it to be a little bit more calm. So a nice little copper mirror that is a little bit different than all the other metal tones in the space. That works great too. I love to mix and match metal tones. So having a mirror like that just as a decoration over there to just be something that you focus on, when you're going to sleep or waking up is a nice thing. Keeping it very simple with, your decor at different levels, gives you a nice focal point. Here's a nice floor plant over here in the corner, plant over here on the corner of the dresser, and then also a nice little kind of piece of metal art here on the wall, just to keep things very simple. Now this time I didn't do a symmetrical, well, I guess you can say I did do more of a symmetrical line. So instead of doing full curtains or full drapes on this wall, I just did a Roman shade. So this is kind of taking up the same visual space again, so you still have symmetry, you still have that balance over there in that corner. And that is basically how you do a queen size bed in a 9-foot by 10-foot room. So that's what you got to kind of keep your eye on. Oh, one last thing I want to say. Just like with the twin size beds, you want to do a bed that doesn't have a high footboard. Again, something like 2 or 3 inches or 4 inches that's going to pop off at the bottom here where a footboard would go would really cut down in this pathway through the space. So having something that has just like a rail system underneath the bed where everything is the same height and same depth is going to be ideal to kind of keep things open and to keep things accessible. Okay, so there you go. There is the dedicated guest suite. So a dedicated guest suite with a queen size bed. I mean, I think that is the most mind-blowing thing when it comes to a room that is only 9 feet by 10 feet. And the queen size bed is positioned on the 9-foot wall. So that's something to really kind of think about. It can be done, as you saw. Now, of course, how it worked is those 2 nightstands that were attached to the wall, as opposed to having 2 freestanding nightstands or bedside tables that would be taking up more space and potentially be deeper off of that wall, which would totally hinder the functionality of the closet door on the other side. So having those two nightstands that were basically bedside tables that were attached to the wall was really the trick that made this one work the most. And then also putting the sconces up too, which I thought was really interesting. You always want to have at least some sort of light beside the bed for reading and for relaxing. So that's always something good too. But having a bed that size in a room that size and having a dresser that's not so deep, those are the things that make it work. And just being able to pay attention to having the pathway around the bed so that you can get in on all, on both sides of the bed, as well as down toward the bottom of the bed, and also not having a footboard. So all of those things take up space. So when you can kind of think about chipping away a little bit at, how to make things a little bit smaller, not having a footboard, maybe having a floating bed frame instead of having a fully, outfitted bed with a headboard, footboard, and rails, you might want to have just maybe a headboard that's behind the top of the bed and having a floating frame underneath instead of having a full bed. So that might help too, to get a lot more space into the room as well. So all those things will work. And that is basically the 3 different ways that I would plan to do this room. And if you're interested, stick around because I'm going to show you the one that my client chose right now. Curious to know if you were surprised by the version that my client chose. I thought it was really interesting, and I think it fits just perfectly for what she needs to do in this space. So if you've enjoyed this video, I'd love for you to like and subscribe to future videos. I do post new videos every Sunday, and again, I talk about small spaces, awkward walls, different rooms with all kinds of different little challenges. So if those are things that you're interested in, please come back and see me again, and I will see you again next week for a whole new blog. And I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for stopping by.